Hey everyone, this is Claire Langston. Before we begin, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share isn't just my story, it's the story of every person who's ever worn a uniform and been invisible in their own home. Every soldier who's been called a diversity hire. Every servicewoman who's saved lives on the battlefield, only to be told she's just playing soldier. If you've ever sat at a family table feeling like an outsider in your own home, dismissed and ridiculed by the people who raised you, then this one's for you. Picture this, a Thanksgiving dinner turning into a battlefield of words, my own kin laughing at my uniform like it was a Halloween costume. Just a desk jockey, they sneered. 3 bronze stars pinned to my chest, medals earned in blood and fire, reduced to perfect attendance awards. But oh, how the tables turned when my phone rang with a voice from the Pentagon. Congratulations, Colonel. What happened next? My family didn't believe it. Not at first. And honestly, I didn't need them to. Because here's what I've learned after 19 years in the U.S. Army, sometimes silence is the most devastating weapon in your arsenal. Stick with me through this roller coaster, from the sting of betrayal to the sweet taste of vindication. You won't believe how one phone call shattered 19 years of doubt. Hit that play button, and let's march into my story. It was a chilly November afternoon in 2023, the leaves outside our family farmhouse in rural Tennessee crunching underfoot like forgotten promises. I remember the exact moment I pulled into that gravel driveway. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my Jeep, knuckles white. In the rearview mirror, I could see my reflection, Army service uniform pressed and perfect, ribbons aligned with precision. 19 years of service staring back at me. Should I have changed? I thought. Should I have hidden who I am, just to make this easier? But no. I'd spent too many years making myself smaller for their comfort. Thanksgiving had always been sacred in the Langston clan, a time for turkey, tall tales, and tying up loose ends from the year. I'd driven in from Fort Campbell, my base just a stone's throw away, still clad in my Army service uniform. The green fabric hugged my frame, adorned with ribbons that whispered of battles fought and won. 19 years in the U.S. Army, that's my legacy. For deployments to hot zones across the globe, leading platoons through the dust and danger of Afghanistan and Iraq. I'd earned 3 bronze stars for Valor, commanded raids that saved lives, and mentored soldiers who'd become like family. I'd graduated from Ranger School, one of the first women to earn that tab. I'd called in airstrikes. I'd written letters to grieving mothers. I'd held the hand of a 19-year-old private as he took his last breath in a Kandahar field hospital. But to my blood relatives, I was Claire, the dreamer who traded dolls for dog tags. The front door opened before I reached it. Mom stood there, apron already dusted with flour, her smile warm but weary. Claire. Oh honey, you made it. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. For a moment, just a moment, I felt like I was home. Wouldn't miss it, Mom, I said, stepping inside. The old wooden dining table groaned under the weight of the feast, golden roasted turkey, cornbread stuffing laced with sage, sweet potato casserole topped with marshmallows, and green beans swimming in bacon grease. My father, George, presided at the head, his weathered hands testament to a lifetime of farming the land. He'd never served, but he carried himself like a general in his own domain. He looked up when I entered, his eyes scanning my uniform with barely concealed disdain. Still wearing that costume, I see, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Mom, Margaret, bustled from kitchen to table, her apron dusted with flour, her smile warm but weary. And then there was Uncle Harold, up from Nashville, his belly laugh booming like artillery fire. He was already 3 beers deep, his face flushed and jovial. There she is, Harold bellowed. Little Claire, all grown up and playing G.I. Jane. Playing. Always playing. I forced a smile and took my seat, my back rigid with the posture drilled into me at West Point. We bowed our heads for grace, thanking the Lord for blessings and bounties. Dad's voice resonated through the room, and we thank you for bringing our family together, safe and sound, to share in your abundance. Safe. The word echoed in my mind. Did he have any idea how many times I'd prayed for safety while mortars rained down on forward operating base Salerno? But as soon as the amen faded, the conversation veered into familiar territory, me. So, Claire, Uncle Harold started, carving into his turkey with gusto, still playing soldier girl down at the base? What do you really do all day? File reports on how to fold flags? The table erupted in chuckles. Even Mom smiled behind her napkin. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my composure. Army training kicks in, assess the threat, maintain discipline. I took a slow breath, counting to 5 the way my therapist taught me after my 3rd deployment. Before I could form a response, Dad jumped in, chuckling as he passed the gravy boat. "Oh, Harold, you know Claire's just an office worker in fatigues. All those medals? Probably for perfect attendance or something. Right, sweetheart?" The word, sweetheart, landed like a slap. He hadn't called me that since I was 12. Mom tittered softly, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "I tell the ladies at church she's in government administration. Sounds respectable without all the fuss. Government administration." The words landed like shrapnel. Administration? I'd led convoys through IED-littered roads in Kandahar, coordinated air support during firefights in Mosul, and pulled wounded comrades from the jaws of hell. I'd stared down Taliban insurgents, negotiated with tribal leaders under the shadow of mountains that hid snipers, and written eulogies for soldiers who'd never see home again. I remembered Private James Mitchell, 22 years old, engaged to his high school sweetheart. He'd been in my platoon for 8 months when an RPG hit our position. I'd held pressure on his femoral artery for 43 minutes until the medevac arrived. 43 minutes of him telling me about the beach wedding he'd planned, about the dog he and his fiancée were going to adopt, about the teaching degree he wanted to finish. He died 2 hours later in surgery. But here, in this cozy room with its floral wallpaper and family photos, I was a joke. A glorified clerk, as Dad added next, leaning back with a smug nod. I didn't explode. I didn't defend. Instead, I speared a forkful of stuffing and said, "This is delicious, Mom. Pass the rolls?" My hand didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. Internally, though, a storm brewed, not fury, but a steely determination forged in boot camp and beyond. They didn't get it. They'd never asked about the nights I spent in foxholes, rain turning dirt to mud, or the days I trained recruits to survive the unsurvivable. Part of me had given up explaining long ago. As dinner progressed, the jabs continued like intermittent fire. Uncle Harold regaled us with tales of his trucking business, how he'd built it from scratch with real elbow grease. Dad nodded approvingly. That's the American way, building something tangible. Not this, whatever it is you do, Claire. Quotas and diversity hires, I bet. He waved a hand dismissively. Diversity hire. I set down my fork carefully. Very carefully. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. That I got here because of quotas? Dad shrugged. Well, they're pushing all that woke stuff now, aren't they? Women in combat roles, transgender this and that. The army ain't what it used to be. You're right, I said. It's better. The table went silent. Better? Harold scoffed. How do you figure? Because now it reflects the country it protects. Because talent isn't wasted based on gender or talent, Dad interrupted with a bitter laugh. Honey, I'm sure you're good at whatever paperwork you do. But let's be real. You're not exactly storming beaches or anything. By the time pecan pie hit the table, slick with caramel and nuts, I'd had enough. I excused myself, citing fatigue from a recent training exercise. Training exercise, Harold repeated with air quotes. That what they're calling coffee breaks now? I didn't respond. I just climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, each step heavier than the last. Upstairs in my childhood bedroom, the walls still papered with faded maps and posters of historic battles, I collapsed onto the bed. My duffel bag sat in the corner, packed with gear that had seen more action than this house ever would. My phone buzzed, a text from my battalion commander, "Board's deliberating. Stay sharp." I stared at those words. Stay sharp. In 48 hours, the promotion board would decide if I made colonel. If I got brigade command. If all those years, all that sacrifice, had been enough. But right now, in this moment, I felt like that 17-year-old girl again. The one who told her father she wanted to go to West Point. The one who watched his face contort with disappointment. The army? Claire, that's no place for a girl. You'll wash out in weeks. I silenced the phone and closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. Sleep evaded me that night, my mind a whirlwind of recollections. I grew up on this farm, the only child of parents who valued stability over adventure. Dad wanted me to take over the land, marry local, raise kids. But at 17, I watched a documentary on the Gulf War, saw women like me stepping up, and something clicked. I saw Captain Linda Bray, who led troops in Panama. Major Marie Rossi, helicopter pilot in Desert Storm. These weren't characters in movies, they were real women, doing real things, making real differences. I applied to West Point on a whim, or so I told them. The acceptance letter came, and Dad's reaction? The army? Claire, that's no place for a girl. You'll wash out in weeks. I didn't. West Point was a crucible, endless push-ups at dawn, tactical drills in the rain, academics that demanded precision. I remember the first time an upperclassman got in my face, screaming so loud his spit hit my cheek. "You think you belong here, Langston? You think you can hack it?" "Yes, sir." I'd shouted back. "Then prove it." And I did. Every single day. I graduated in the top 10%, commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry, a field opening to women just in time for trailblazers like me. My first assignment was with the 101st Airborne, jumping from planes into mock combat zones, learning to lead under pressure. Deployments shaped me. In 2006, Iraq, the surge. I was a platoon leader in Baghdad, patrolling streets where every shadow could hide an ambush. One night, our convoy hit an IED. The blast flipped our Humvee, flames licking the air. I remember the heat, not just from the fire, but from the pavement, superheated by the Iraqi sun. I remember the ringing in my ears, so loud I couldn't hear my own screams. I remember crawling, my leg bleeding, broken glass embedded in my palms. I crawled out, ears ringing, and pulled my driver to safety amid gunfire. "Stay with me, Private," I shouted, applying a tourniquet as bullets whizzed by. Specialist Rodriguez. 23 years old. 2 daughters back in Texas. "Ma'am," he gasped, "I can't feel my legs." "You're going to be fine," I lied. Because that's what leaders do. Medevac's 2 minutes out. "You're going to see those girls again." He lived, we all did that night. That earned my first Bronze Star. Then Afghanistan, 2010. Helmand Province, opium fields and Taliban strongholds. I commanded a company, 150 soldiers strong, pushing into enemy territory. We cleared villages house by house, hearts pounding. In one skirmish, we were pinned down by machine gun fire. I called in artillery, directed the strike with laser precision. The boom echoed, silence followed. We advanced, but not without cost, lost 2 good men. Sergeant First Class Marcus Thompson. Staff Sergeant David Kim. Writing those letters home, it never gets easier. "Your son was a hero," I'd pen, tears blurring the ink. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I am writing to you with the heaviest of hearts. How do you tell a mother that her son's last words were calling for her? How do you explain that he didn't die instantly, that there were 5 agonizing minutes where we tried everything, but the wound was too severe, the blood loss too catastrophic? You don't. You write about his bravery, his dedication, his sacrifice. And you carry the truth alone. Back stateside, I'd share bits and pieces during holidays. Rough tour, I'd say. Mom would cluck sympathetically and change the subject to recipes. Dad? Why put yourself through that? Get out, get a civilian job. So I stopped. I stopped trying to make them understand. The commendations mounted: Meritorious Service Medal for Logistics in a Joint Op, another Bronze Star for a rescue mission in Syria. I'd gone through Ranger School, the grueling 61 days of sleep deprivation and ruck marches, emerging as one of the first women to earn the tab. Doubters whispered the entire time. They're lowering standards. She's only passing because she's a woman. This is what happens when you let politics into military training. But my troops? They followed me anywhere. Lying there in my childhood bed, I thought of the pioneers, General and Dunwoody, first female 4-star. They'd faced worse skepticism. Now, I was on the brink. The promotion board was reviewing for Colonel, 06, and with it, potential command of a brigade in the 10th Mountain Division. Historic for a woman in combat arms. But would my family see? Doubtful. Not without a wake-up call. Morning broke with frost on the windows, the farm awakening to rooster crows and tractor hums. I laced up my boots and ran the back roads, miles melting away the tension. Running was my reset, outpacing ghosts, clarifying thoughts. My breath created clouds in the cold air, and my feet found their rhythm on the familiar dirt roads. 5 miles. Then 7. Then 10. As my breath synced with strides, I replayed the mockery. Their ignorance stung, but it fueled me too. Every desk jockey comment, every dismissive wave, every time they changed the subject when I tried to share my experiences, it all crystallized into something harder than anger. Determination. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to beg them to understand. I was going to let my achievements speak for themselves. Back home, breakfast was eggs and biscuits, casual chatter about weather and crops. My phone stayed quiet, but anticipation built. The day dragged on with painful slowness. I helped Mom in the garden, pulling up the last of the winter vegetables. I sat with Dad while he reviewed crop yields and complained about grain prices. I listened to Uncle Harold's stories about traffic on I-40. Normal. Mundane. Suffocating. Evening came, leftovers reheated for a simple supper. And then, mid-bite, my cell vibrated. Area code 703, Arlington. Pentagon. My heart stopped. I stepped onto the porch, the cold air biting at my exposed skin. My hands trembled as I answered. Lieutenant Colonel Langston speaking. Lieutenant Colonel Langston, this is General Marcus Reed, Joint Chief Staff. The voice boomed with the authority of someone who'd spent 4 decades in uniform. I'm calling with news that I suspect you've been waiting to hear. I couldn't breathe. Claire, congratulations. The board's approved your promotion to colonel. And more, you're slated for command of the 1st Brigade, 10th Mountain Division. First woman ever in that position. The Army's betting on you big time. Details incoming via secure channels, but I wanted to personally commend your record. What you've accomplished, both for yourself and for every servicewoman who'll come after you, it matters. Time froze. Colonel. Brigade Command, over 4,000 soldiers, deployments to rugged terrains, strategic ops. A milestone. Thank you, sir, I stammered, voice steady despite the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. It's an honor. We discussed logistics briefly: Fort Drum posting, ceremony in D.C., transition timeline. My mind raced, absorbing every detail while simultaneously trying to process the magnitude of what this meant. I hung up, the stars above twinkling like distant flares. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the cold November air fill my lungs. Colonel Claire Langston. Brigade Commander. First woman to command a brigade in the 10th Mountain Division. Then I turned and walked back inside. The dining room was exactly as I'd left it. Mom clearing plates. Dad reading the newspaper. Harold scrolling through his phone. I placed my phone down on the table with a soft click. Everything okay? Mom asked, concern etching her face as she noticed my expression. I took a breath. That was the Pentagon. All eyes snapped to me. I've been promoted to colonel, and given command of a brigade in the 10th Mountain Division. The silence was deafening. Jaws dropped. Dad's knife clanged against porcelain. Uncle Harold choked on his water, coughing violently. Mom's eyes widened like saucers, her hand flying to her chest. Colonel? Dad echoed, disbelief thick in his voice. Command? Like, actual troops? Yes, I said calmly, meeting his eyes without flinching. 4,000 of them. Combat Brigade. The 10th Mountain Division, they're deploying to Eastern Europe next year. I'll be leading them. The weight of those words settled over the room like snow. Uncle Harold whistled low, setting down his glass. Well, I'll be damned, Claire. That's actually impressive. First woman to ever hold this command, I continued, my voice steady. The ceremony's in D.C. in 2 weeks. Secretary of the Army will be there. Press conference afterward. Dad just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. No immediate congrats, but the mockery? Vanished in the shockwave. Honey, Mom whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us you were up for this? I did, I said quietly. You just never listened. That night, sleep came in fits, dreams of parades and promotions mingling with family faces. By morning, I ran again, the sun rising over fields golden with harvest remnants. This command meant everything, validating years of sweat, blood, and silent endurance. In the kitchen, Dad ambushed me over coffee. He was already dressed, hair combed, face serious. This wasn't casual. This brigade thing, you're serious? He asked, unable to meet my eyes. Absolutely, I replied, stirring cream into my cup with deliberate slowness. It's what I've trained for my entire career. He fidgeted with his mug, tracing the rim with his thumb. I always thought you were, support staff. Safe behind lines. Coordinating supplies or something. Dad, I said, setting down my spoon. I've been on the front lines. Led charges, taken fire. I've held dying soldiers in my arms and made split-second calls that saved lives, or ended them. I've called in airstrikes. I've negotiated with tribal warlords. I've written letters to mothers telling them their sons aren't coming home. It's never been safe. It's service. His face paled. Why keep it from us? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. Instead, I took a slow sip of coffee, letting him sit with his discomfort. I didn't, I said gently but firmly. You never listened. Every time I tried to share, you changed the subject. Every time I wore my uniform home, you made jokes. You saw me as the little girl who should have stayed put, married a farmer, given you grandchildren. But that was never who I was. He looked down at his weathered hands, hands that had worked this land for 50 years. Maybe I was wrong. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close. Close enough for now. By afternoon, the news leaked. Pentagon press release, Colonel Claire Langston, Trailblazer takes command. My inbox flooded, texts from battle buddies, calls from superiors, emails from journalists requesting interviews. Headlines screamed, first female brigade commander in 10th Mountain Division. Breaking barriers, Colonel Claire Langston makes history. From lieutenant to legend, the woman leading 4,000 troops. The family huddled around the TV, watching CNN recap my career, West Point honors, Iraq and Afghanistan tours, Ranger Tab, Bronze Stars. Footage they'd obtained from Department of Defense archives showed me in full combat gear during training exercises, awarding medals to troops, briefing senior leadership. An interviewed general praised my record, Colonel Langston's leadership is unmatched. She's shattered ceilings with competence, not quotas. The soldiers under her command would follow her anywhere, and that's the highest compliment any officer can receive. Uncle Harold grinned, his earlier mockery forgotten. Our Claire, a star. Wait till the guys at the trucking depot hear about this. Mom wiped tears, her hands shaking. We had no clue. I had no idea it was like this. Dad sat silent, remote gripped tight in his fist, eyes reflecting something I'd never seen before, respect. Maybe even pride. I flew to D.C. days later for the briefing. In the Pentagon's halls, echoes of history surrounded me. I walked corridors where generals had planned D-Day, where presidents had made decisions that shaped the free world. The ceremony, dress blues pristine, medals polished to perfection. I stood tall in a room full of brass and dignitaries as the Secretary of the Army approached. Colonel Langston, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber, by the authority vested in me, I hereby promote you to the rank of Colonel in the United States Army. He pinned the eagle insignia on my shoulders, silver eagles that represented not just rank, but responsibility. Legacy. History. Lead with honor, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Always, sir, I replied. The press conference followed. Microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing, I stood at the podium and spoke from the heart. This isn't about gender, it's about capability. To those doubting women in uniform, we've been here all along, proving ourselves in deserts and mountains, in planning rooms and on battlefields. Service knows no bounds of gender, race, or background. It only knows dedication, sacrifice, and the unwavering commitment to protect our nation. I stand here today not just for myself, but for every woman who was told she couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't. We can. We did. And we will continue to lead. Applause roared through the room. Questions flew, about my deployments, my leadership style, my plans for the brigade. I answered each one with the same confidence I'd used to brief generals in combat zones. Backstage, General Reed clasped my shoulder. You've made history, Colonel. Now go make it mean something. Weeks passed in a blur of orders processed, gear packed, goodbyes to Fort Campbell. I returned home one last time before heading to Fort Drum. The farmhouse felt changed, tension replaced by tentative warmth. When my Jeep pulled up, Dad was waiting on the porch. He stood when he saw me, straightening his shoulders. Colonel, he said, the title fitting like a glove. Not Claire. Not, sweetheart. Colonel. Dinner that night was heartfelt, stories shared, questions asked. Real questions. Tell us about Afghanistan, Uncle Harold urged, leaning forward with genuine interest. What was it really like? I did, the heat that could kill you, the soldiers who became brothers and sisters, the impossible decisions, the heroism I witnessed daily, the heartbreaks that never fully healed. They listened. Really listened. I told them about Sergeant Thompson, who'd saved 6 soldiers by throwing himself on a grenade. About Captain Martinez, who'd negotiated peace with a hostile village elder and prevented a massacre. About Private Chen, who'd learned English in the army and sent half her pay home to her immigrant parents. I told them the truth, war is hell, but the people who fight it are extraordinary. Later, on the porch swing with the sunset painting the sky orange and purple, Dad joined me with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Claire, he began, then stopped. Started again. Colonel. I didn't realize. All those years, I thought I was protecting you. Thought the farm, a family here, that was safety. I didn't understand you were out there providing safety for all of us. I know, I interjected softly. But I didn't serve for praise or understanding. I served for duty, for my soldiers, for freedom. For people to have the choice to run farms or drive trucks or do whatever they want, because someone's willing to defend that right. He nodded, his weathered face lined with regret. I'm proud of you. Should have said it ages ago. Should have listened. No drama, no grand gesture. Just quiet reconciliation under a Tennessee sky. Inside, Mom had framed a news clipping, Colonel Claire Langston, Army's new vanguard. It hung in the hallway, right next to old family photos. Now, from my office at Fort Drum, snow blanketing the grounds outside my window, I oversee my brigade, training, readiness, resolve. 4,000 soldiers. My responsibility. My honor. That Thanksgiving dinner? A turning point, but not the one you might think. The moment my family started respecting me wasn't when I got promoted. It was simply when they finally saw me. When the evidence became too overwhelming to dismiss. But here's the truth I want you to understand, I didn't need them to see me to know my worth. My soldiers knew. My fellow officers knew. The enemy knew. Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. I let my actions roar louder than any argument ever could. To every servicewoman out there, undervalued or unseen, persist. Your victories will echo louder than words. Don't beg for respect, command it through excellence. To every person watching this who's been dismissed by their family, told their dreams are too big, their goals unrealistic, keep going. The moment you prove them wrong will be sweet, yes, but the real victory is knowing you never needed their approval to become who you were meant to be. This is Colonel Claire Langston, signing off. Remember, the best response to doubt is excellence. The best response to mockery is achievement. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all.